I need to move from a very goal or win or loss oriented way of living towards appreciating the process and the work. Fast forward 6 or 7 months, I'm at the US Embassy in Helsinki getting my green card. And then the person tells me, oh, well, you know that you have to move to the country within the first 4 months. Like, oh, absolutely, of course. I had no idea. I'd never been to the US before. I was 19. I spoke the language, but I wasn't fluent. Again, one of these big lessons in life. I used to think that it's black or white. You know, you're either this or that, but no, I'm a good example. I'm living proof of that. You can learn almost anything.
Welcome, Erica. It's great to have you on the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So I'd love to get started just by hearing your story and your journey so far and how you can help our listener today with their entrepreneurship journey.
Yeah, my name is Erkka Zuvanda. Some of you call me EJ. I was born and raised here in Finland, but I've spent a lot of my time in the US as well. I'm a dual citizen, so I guess that's why my nickname. But briefly about my background, I was born and raised in Finland and moved to the States for the first time when I was 19. That's when I won my green card in that famous lottery. And ever since, kind of been back and forth. I've lived in many places in Germany, in Finland, in the US. I've been an entrepreneur in all of those countries and also had a long corporate career, worked for a Finnish cell phone company called Nokia. Many of you might have heard that name in the past. And then roughly 15, 16 years ago, I left corporate, kind of had myself fired, if you will, and then jumped into real estate. I lived in San Diego, California back then. It was a totally unknown territory for me. I had never done real estate in the US, didn't know anybody. And that was kind of, and still is, one of those key attributes or my personal qualities that I'm not afraid to do a reset. And building this, linking this back to entrepreneurship, I think that's one of the things that business owners like us, we need to be comfortable with, dealing with the unknown and sometimes doing that heavy lifting when it comes to resetting and starting from scratch. But in a nutshell, I've been an entrepreneur for 15, 16 years now. And I've mainly done real estate. I've been involved in other businesses as well. And lately, and that's, I guess, how you discovered me as well, I started posting different videos on different social media platforms roughly 4 months ago. And that was because I wanted to challenge myself and take myself to another unknown territory, if you will. And also wanted to build a legacy for my kids who are 15 and 18. And then I also saw an opportunity to pursue one of my dreams, which has been kind of business coaching and helping other entrepreneurs to grow their business. And how that's going to shape up, that's going to be part of my story on different social media platforms. So.
Nice. Yeah, I think that's great. And there's something in what you said I want to touch on, which is that you're viewing legacy not just as financial or material, but the knowledge, the body of wisdom that you're creating and passing on to your kids, which I think is priceless.
Yeah, I noticed that. I noticed that I've always been passionate about and vocal about my ideas. That was already at school when I was younger. I always wanted to express my opinions. And when you're a father, you understand that there's a time and place for that advice. You can't be just pounding your kids with different advice all day long. And I felt that, if anything, my legacy could be in the form of social media content. And then when my kids are older, they're now 18 and 15. When they're older, then they can, at their will, so to say, watch those videos and those lessons if they are any relevant to them, business and life, at a later stage in their life. So it wouldn't be me kind of trying to put it down their throat, so to say, and they can decide themselves.
Yeah, because they're still in that teenage phase. So I don't know how rebellious your kids are. I know I was very rebellious around that age. I was a troublemaker.
I'm lucky they are not, but I mean, they have their own strong will, of course, like we all do, and which is good in a way.
Yeah. And it sounds like even though you've focused on real estate, you could probably help them even if they wanted to start a business in some other field. Is that correct?
I believe so. I've been involved in other businesses. I helped my brother. I was the chairman of the board of his business when that was sold to a private equity company. That was an 8-digit exit, and good for him. But I was kind of on the sidelines along the way, and then had a really active role when we entertained all these offers and talked to these private equity venture capitalist companies roughly 6-7 years ago. And I've been involved in other businesses too. And over the last couple of years, I've spent a lot of time studying different topics, whether it's philosophy, happiness, business overall, sales and marketing. So I believe so, but time will tell, of course. So we'll see.
Okay, perfect. So let's start with what do you think is the number one thing new entrepreneurs get wrong when they're going about starting their business?
I think the number one thing that people oftentimes get wrong is that we seem to think that we need to have all the information in place to get started. And there is no such thing. If we had all the info, it would already be late because then everybody else would be doing it too. So there seem to be a lot of people who are always waiting for that next piece of info or data package or whatever thing to make it real. But in reality, it's about dealing with fear. And this is no different than moving to another country, to another city, starting a job, starting a business. We all have to deal with fear. And this is one of my passions in life as well, talking about fear and personal development. And I think it's directly linked to entrepreneurship. So we need to get comfortable with losing. We need to get comfortable with fear and unknown, because pain and adversity is a certain in life. There's no way around it. And the sooner we realize that, the better off we are. And then our next job is to learn how to deal with that pain and adversity. And it might sound kind of weird, but it's so true. We need to get comfortable with that, because if we're always very outcome driven, meaning winning or losing, then we oftentimes get disappointed, because life is a series of micro losses followed by an occasional win. So if you're always about that next thing, whether I succeeded or failed, you're going to be disappointed. And fear is linked to that. It's always the external validation of somebody else's opinion or fear of losing face. But I think fear and not taking action, to me, is the number one thing. And it's scary. It's scary to me too. I mean, right now, I put my real estate business on hold just to start doing these videos. And it's a full-time job, basically. I don't have any income right now. None. Of course, I have my savings and I have I have passive income from my real estate holdings, but it's not enough to cover all my expenses. So now I'm just banking on future income streams to make it happen. I'm dealing with the same fear. There are better days and there are worse days. And sometimes I'm like, what the fuck am I doing? And then I have a good day but I don't have an option. I just have to face the reality and face those fears and then just keep going.
Yeah, there's a saying I heard recently, something like fear is getting your pants wet and courage is moving forward in soaking wet pants.
Correct. Yeah. Regardless of fear. I completely agree. But life is not complex. It's actually very simple. And like I told you before we went live, I recorded today a new YouTube video about how I can apply my 31 years of fitness and training lessons in my everyday life, and particularly in business. And this is one of those things that, there's always uncertainty. You just have to learn the same things. It's not complicated. There is no one right answer. There's only one wrong answer, and that is not to do anything. Because if you think about it, at school, we were taught that there's only one answer, right? One correct answer. You go that math test or history or whatever the teacher decided, or whatever the curriculum says, that's the right answer. And you were taught early on for so many years that there was only one right answer. When you think about life, there's different directions. You can have multiple routes to the same destination. but the only one wrong answer is not to do anything. And it's the same as inaction. So,
Yeah, this concept that really changed my life around that was learning about mistakes of omission and becoming aware
mm,
of our bias towards fear of action and fear of failure through action. But then we
mm,
have this blind spot where we don't realize that we're failing all the time just by not taking action. We're paying a
correct,
price every day.
correct. To me, it's all about I want to live my life nowadays so that I don't have any regrets in the end. I honestly only have two objectives. Number one, that I don't regret anything. I wish I is the thing that I'm scared the most. Meaning when I'm out of time, when I have to punch my ticket, somebody tells me that, look, Mr. Sumanta, you have no time left. And I'm like, I wish I had done this, gone there, started this business and whatnot. So no regrets. Because like people say, fear is temporary, but regret lasts forever. And that is so true. So that's my objective number one. And the objective number two is really to live my life on my terms. So I guess I'm a true entrepreneur in that sense, that I just want to dictate and own my own future. But it all boils down to that fear again that we come back to. That objective number one that I mentioned is directly linked to that, because there's always going to be fear. But if you want to live, in my opinion, a fulfilling life, you need to accept the fact that there will be pain and adversity and find a way somehow to move forward, regardless of that fear.
Right. Okay. So I think that's great advice. So basically, beginner entrepreneurs need to take action. They don't need to worry about learning everything before they get started. You can learn as you go.
Mm,
And they need to learn to identify when it's their fear holding them back rather
mm,
than, some kind of, let's say, reasonable caution.
mm, mm.
Okay.
Yeah,
Sounds
correct.
good. So what drew you to real estate in the first place? And then why did you sort of decide to make the transition into content creation?
So real estate first. So me and my brother, this was almost 20 years ago. We both had our jobs and businesses, and I had that corporate career of mine, and my brother also worked for somebody else. And then later on, he started his own business. But we had done real estate on the side, and that was mainly in the form of buy and hold or rentals here in Finland. And that was a passive thing on the side. And then when I worked for Nokia for 10, 11 years, give or take. And I enjoyed it in the beginning, but then later on it got way too big and bureaucratic, and I didn't really get anything out of it anymore. And then I decided that I have to do something else and jump into the unknown. And then since I had done real estate in Finland, doing something different, but still had done it, I felt that, okay, I like concrete things and, visual things and being able to influence the outcome and build something and all that. I was like, okay, this could be something. And then I just decided to make the move in the US. And that's when I was in San Diego. And it was, first 6 months was just a grind like anything else. And I had set a goal for myself that after a full calendar year, I would start making money. And it happened after 6 or 7 months. So I guess that turned out pretty well. And then my family, we decided to move back to Europe. That was 8, 9 years ago. And then I had done real estate at my company, actually 2 companies in the US, and then I started another one here. So kind of started from scratch again, doing buy and sell and new construction as well. And then I've been doing it for now ever since. And I started feeling that well, to me, entrepreneurship is about staying in the game, but you can do pivots along the way, meaning oftentimes entrepreneurs find themselves starting multiple companies in their career or during their career. And I felt that I had always been passionate about teaching and lecturing and talking about my principles and ideas. And then when my brother sold his company to a private equity firm, I stayed on board and I was his representative for a couple of years and worked with private equity people closely. And I realized that kind of a board, being a director of a board type of a work actually was very interesting to me. And then I didn't do anything about it until I would say 6 months ago when I started, made a decision to transition my entrepreneurship or entrepreneurial career towards business coaching and all of that. And then at the same time, I realized that if I was really honest with myself, we all have insecurities. One of my deep insecurities was that I always felt that, one of the reasons why I started training, let's face it, a 16 or 17-year-old kid, starts training usually for one reason, because he or she is, insecure. I felt I was weak and I didn't have muscles and I wasn't strong enough. The same reason I felt that, if you look at my social media presence before, anytime before this spring, it was non-existing. I wasn't anywhere. It was a decision of mine to be anonymous and kind of like not show my face, not show my name anywhere. And then I was like, okay, if I'm honest with myself, the reason why I've been avoiding all the attention is that I felt that I suck at it. Then I've always been one of those people who, if I identify a development area, then I start doing something about it. And I'm like, okay, I'm not following my own principles at all if I don't face these fears. And then I just started one day to record. I faced the camera and I started talking about stuff. And, obviously then you get better. And now it's been 4 months and here I am. So that was kind of the long answer to a short question.
Perfect. Yeah, I think that's great for people to understand that, because I think looking at your journey, they can realize the career I start with is not the career I need to die with. And it's okay to make a switch. It's okay to go from a stable, safe job to something that might not be stable, right? For me, I did the same thing. I quit my government job because I realized this podcast was by far the most fulfilling thing I've ever done. And I was like, okay, I'm going to figure out how to do this for the rest of my life. And after a year and a half, I couldn't generate income from it. So I started looking at paid opportunities again. But I realized that year and a half taught me so many invaluable lessons that I wouldn't change a thing. So even in the failures, I feel like there are no regrets, really.
And you haven't, it's not a failure. You still, you stayed in the game, right? You still do it. And you can temporarily, this is one of the key things I think people need to understand is that but I feel I have to, at least. I need to move from a very goal or win or loss oriented way of living towards appreciating the process and the work. So how do you define success? To me, success, and this has been super hard. But I first learned how to do it in fitness and training. And now I can, like I mentioned 10 minutes ago, I can now kind of apply those learnings in my business life too. So I learned when it comes to training that I don't look at what other people do. And I have to learn how to appreciate the daily work and forget the wins and losses. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if you win or lose. You're always left with that epic story. And at the end of the day, that's what we do. We collect those stories and those experiences. And to me, it's not a failure. You're still in the game and you keep playing. And temporarily, you might take another job just to provide for your family. That's okay. That's what we have to do. I don't know what I have to do in 6 months or 12 months. It might be that I have to do something similar. But as long as I stay in the game, it's not a failure to me. It's success is when you identify the winning actions and then you stick to those. And then it might go either way because there are so many things you can't influence.
Yeah, and there's this idea from Alex Hormozy that I really like, which is volume negates luck. So if you feel like you're getting unlucky, just do more and do it longer, do it harder, and eventually luck will even out.
Correct. Yeah, absolutely. Alex is I follow his stuff too. So yeah, he's a great guy.
Yeah, I have both his books behind me. I'm looking forward to the next one.
Oh, okay. Yeah. That's cool. Yeah, but you know him, so it's all about action. So it's like staying in the game. So that's one of his sayings too, and I'm sure he took that from somebody else. So that's what we all do. So we just have to. We keep using these same phrases and these same things that have been invented 500 years ago, whatever, and then just like you add your own flavor and touch to it, and that's how it becomes unique. Because there might be somebody who needs to hear that particular phrase from your mouth, from you directly, and not from Alex or from this other guy.
And as a side note, I feel like your content and your brand is very similar to Alex's, because for one thing, there just aren't that many jacked entrepreneurs out there, right?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah,
And
obviously, I'm the smallest fish in the largest pond, and he's a pretty gigantic whale in that same pond, but or ocean or whatever. But yeah, I mean, maybe I can relate to a lot of his stuff for sure.
yeah, I mean, it was only a few years ago he had less than 500 subscribers.
Yeah.
And he's made videos about, his content strategy and how he scaled and so on. And I think the other similar thing is both of you talk about philosophy and about how to be happy in life, and you share your personal stories and you openly share your failures, right? Which I think is very
Oh,
important.
absolutely.
Because there's
Absolutely.
some people, like Andrew Tates of the world, who kind of they give the impression that they've never failed. And I think that misleads young men who are seeking mentorship, who are seeking positive role models. So that comes to my next question, which is
Mm,
I read a book by Richard Reeves,
mm,
and it's basically about young men and boys and the problems they're facing, and how now basically 66% of university graduates are going to be women, and women are on track to earn more than men, and men are having this problem of like they're basically getting stuck in video games, porn, staying in the basement, and their parents are taking care of them. And
mm,
so this failure to launch problem, where they're not starting businesses, they're not taking risks,
mm,
they're not finishing university, and so on. Whereas
mm,
women are being rewarded for like doing their homework, being conscientious, being hardworking, wanting to
mm,
please their parents or their teachers, and so on.
mm, mm, mm,
And so this also creates a problem for women, because now women don't have as many suitable men to marry and to have kids with and start families with. So my
mm.
question is really, what is your message to young men out there to take control of their lives and to kind of tune out the noise of everything going around them that is negative and just focus on themselves?
That's a good question. Something I've been thinking about a lot, and you're right. I mean, philosophy and overall happiness is one of my true passions in life. And one of the other guys, speaking of people who I follow, one of the other guys I follow closely is Gary Vaynerchuk. I don't know if you know Gary
Yep, I know.
V. And since you know Gary, you know that he talks about this a lot when it comes to how we overprotect and overcuddle our kids, and how we're not doing any favors when we hand out eighth place trophies. This is one of his, I mean, I think most brilliant simplifications. But I've been thinking about these things a lot too, and I have my own podcast in Finnish with this other guy. I'm going back there and coming to answer your question. So just interrupt me if you think that I'm way too broad with my answer. But um, to your question, I'm like I said, I'm a real estate investor, and I've been doing these rentals for almost 20 years now. And this was the first year, maybe last year, but this year, when I have a vacant, open property or nobody renting it, and then I try to find a new tenant, and never ever have I had so many parents calling on behalf of their kids, trying to set them up, talking to me directly, and these kids are 19, 20, 21, 22 sometimes. And they call me and they say, hey, this and that, my daughter, my son needs an apartment. You have one for rent. I'm like, okay, so why am I talking to you? Of course, I'm polite, but message being the same. And they're like, oh, yeah, this and that, he or she's, at work or studying or running or training or whatever, so they can't be on the phone. I'm like, okay, well, ask them to call me. And it was funny then, this one girl called me back, and then all of a sudden I realized that this was a conference call where the mom was there too. And I'm like, okay, so I understand that, it's the first time you do it, but you got to start doing this stuff. And to your point, I think I have a boy and a girl. My son is 18, my daughter is 15. Of course, they have different personalities, but I started talking about this a lot with my own kids. And now with my 18-year-old, I just had a conversation with him on the phone today. He said, can I get some gas money? I have a car. He has a car. and driver's license. It was like, well, Patrick, look, this is something that you got to take care of by yourself. You have a summer job, so you need to learn how to manage your money and do that. I'm not punishing you. I'm actually doing you a favor. Because like Gary said in one of his videos, when you do all that stuff on behalf of your child, you're actually sending a message that they are not good enough, that I don't believe in you. And I think it really hit me. I'm like, that's right. I'm not sure if the kids see it that way, but instead of when, that next availability or that apartment shows up, it's like, yeah, you can do it. Just call yourself, do all the work, do all the legwork, do all the heavy lifting because you can do it. I trust you. You're so capable. You're so competent instead of doing it, and the kids never have to deal with it. So this is I think it's a dilemma. I think it's an epidemic or whatever, big problem. I'm not sure if it's female, male. I don't have any data like you mentioned, but maybe that's the inevitable outcome that we have to be dealing with. What's the solution? What's the solution would be the next question, right? So I think the solution is that we have these conversations with the kids. We give them the opportunity to excel. They live at home rent free and they get the food, but then everything else, when they become adults, 18, 19, they get a job and they start to provide for themselves. But it's hard. I'm a parent too. I know those are hard conversations.
Yeah, you're right. We have to stop enabling them to stay stuck. And I think necessity really is the mother of all invention. Like when I look back at my life, the times when I, for example, had to move out, I found a new place, I got a new job, I did everything in like 2 months. And, and that was after like 2 years of not making any progress. So it was like, yeah, once you have the real deadline, you move and you get things done.
Correct. Get things done. That's the same thing when I moved to the States for the first time. I was 19. I had never been to the country, literally. This is a funny story. I was in the military here in Finland when I was 18. And the same day when I got out, I got a note from was something INS, immigration and whatever. Anyhow, the immigration services of the United States. And congratulations, you're one of the first 100,000, of which 55,000 will get the green card. So please do this and this and that. Okay, that was September 10th, my birthday. So then fast forward 6 or 7 months, I'm at the U.S. Embassy in Helsinki getting my green card. And, talking to the guy, the officer over there, is like, okay, congratulations, now you have it. I'm like, great. Okay, so what do I do next? I had no plans because a good friend of mine participated the year before and is like, why don't you do the same? I was like, okay, well, I've always been about, insurance policy and backup plans and options in life. So why not? That would be a good option to have. And then the person tells me, okay, well, when are you going to move? I'm like, I don't know. Well, you know that you have to move to the country within the first 4 months. I'm like, oh, absolutely, of course. I had no idea. I'd never been to the U.S. before. I was 19. I spoke the language, but I wasn't fluent in any way. I'm like, okay. Speaking of jumping in the cold water, so I had to get the plane tickets, and that was summer, and I went to Florida because a friend of our family had a condo there. And I called him up. I said, hey, can I rent it by any chance? Or do you know any place that would be available this summer? And then luckily they picked me up at the airport and then left the following day. There I was. There was no internet. There was no Google. There was Yellow Pages and Sunday paper to look for a job and open a bank account and get driver's license. But anyhow, I'm not putting myself on a pedestal, but I'm just saying that this is exactly what you mentioned. It's like when you have to, you find a way. And our kids are capable too.
Yeah, and there's something from Jordan Peterson that I really like, which is he just asked this very simple question of, if you could design your child's life, how would you design it? Right? If you could decide how each person treats them, would you want everybody bowing to them, saying yes, being nice to them, giving them everything they ask for? And the answer is obviously no. You wouldn't want that for your kids.
Exactly.
Right? You'd want some hardship. You'd want some adversity. You'd want them to face challenges and grow and then become stronger for it.
And I think that's why kids doing sports early in life is such a good way to practice winning and losing in a safe environment. Of course, assuming that the adults are safe. But because that's kind of like that's like the whole world in a microscopic picture, in a small picture, that, you win some, you lose some. And you have to move on. And I don't know if you saw this, but there was this Roger Federer speech. I don't know where he gave that, but obviously one of the most successful male tennis players of all time. And I think if the numbers are right, he played 1,560 singles matches. And he won almost 80% of the matches. But when it comes to the single points within those matches, he only won 54%. So basically almost half of the points, he lost. So think about it. One of the most successful guys. So it's about wins and losses. And he said, you can Google it, find the speech, but it's like his lesson was that you have to move on. But every single point that you play has to be the most important point and ball in your life. You focus all your energy and effort into that one point. And then when it's all said and done, regardless of what happened, then you move on. You move on because you win only half, a little over half. So you lose almost half of the points you play. Think about it. And he's one of the most successful players of all times. So that's our life too. Life is about micro losses followed by an occasional win. So anyhow, tying back to winning and losing and fear and stuff like that.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. So looking at focus, now that your focus is content creation, let's say you and I are chatting 3 years from now, and you're super happy about the way your YouTube channel has gone, the business, everything, you're sustainable and so on. So what does that look like 3 years from now? What does success look like?
Success to me is that I was able to stick to my plan, identify the winning actions, stay committed, and then find a way to be happy and get a good living out of it. And then one of my objectives for this was to carve out a niche where I could turn this into a global thing. I could maybe spend the winter somewhere else, maybe in the US, maybe in Spain, and summers here, and have clients all over, and some face-to-face, some virtual. But to me, it's not about a financial goal per se, but it's about being able to do what I'm passionate about and having no regrets. So living life on my own terms, that would be the definition of success.
Nice. And do you have any aspirations to sort of be invited to give talks, be a public speaker?
Potentially. I think I have to get better first, but potentially, yeah. I've done a little bit of that right after graduating from business school to some students who were still at school. So I kind of like it, and I would say I enjoy it. And I think I would probably be pretty good at it, but I have to practice a little more. But yeah, I see that as one potential avenue to pursue. But I think that would be a sidekick to the main business, so to say. But we'll see. It's going to be interesting to see.
Cool. And who's your ideal client? Who are the kind of people you really would love to work with and coach and help grow?
I think I would say that based on my life experience. So I got divorced 8-9 years ago. I had a breakup after that. So I've had a lot of personal, I would say, adversity as well in my life. I've lived in different places, and I have, I think, a pretty unique combination of what I call health, wealth, and happiness skills. I think somebody, maybe an entrepreneur between the age of 35 to 50, who has a family and who understands the need to balance the work life and the family life. And then based on my track record, I think somebody under the million threshold in terms of revenue and being able to grow that to 3 to 5 million level. I think somebody like that would probably be my ideal client to begin with.
Okay, cool. And who do you think is the sort of current person watching your YouTube content?
That's a good question. I actually, to be perfectly honest, I looked at my YouTube, a couple of videos once, and I think the number one location was London in the UK, and the age bracket was actually below that. It was somewhere between 25 to 35. but I haven't paid that much attention to it yet. So I've been focusing on volume, getting better. So doing more of what I do just to see how I can get better and what works and what doesn't, and really focusing on providing value. And I'm kind of thinking that this is a long 5 year commitment anyhow. And I have time and I don't worry about the visuals that much. You probably noticed that. And I don't worry about I don't have the best equipment or any of that stuff. So I just try to focus on providing something valuable, kind of give. And then at some point people start hopefully asking. And then I work with a couple of entrepreneurs here locally, and those have been for free intentionally on my behalf. And I agreed with them that it's a 16-week type of a trial, and then at the end of that period, then they'll either start paying or then we part ways, and they promise to give me feedback and potentially a review that I go a testimonial that I can use going forward. So that's how I look at it. So first I need to get better and, provide a lot of content and talk about the stuff that I'm doing and what works, and then see how it goes from there.
Yeah, my intuition was probably younger men, but I'm sure
Yeah,
there'll be a way in the future.
maybe.
Yeah.
Out of curiosity, why do you think younger men?
Well, I watch the content. I'm 28, and
Okay.
also I think it's generally younger men who are seeking out self improvement content more so. Where I think the people with busy
Probably.
families and a business to run, they're probably not watching YouTube as much. And when they
Hmm.
are, they might be watching it for like, entertainment when they can get a chance. Kind of like
Good
Netflix.
point.
Yeah,
Good point.
to unwind. Um,
Good point. Yeah, I think you're right. Probably. Yeah, maybe that's the thing, and maybe those people would see me potentially as some sort of a father figure, having done a lot of stuff, and maybe you're right. Maybe I need to rethink this a little bit.
Now, if you're playing
And
the
they
long,
haven't made
yeah,
sorry, and they haven't made the mistakes yet with their relationships and personal life and all that.
right. Um, because
Help
I
them
think,
with.
yeah, one thing you mentioned you might be able to help with is if someone is going through a divorce or a breakup or they're post divorce and they're trying to get
Mm,
their life back together, you have experience with that. And I actually know another
correct.
entrepreneur, Andrew Kirby. He actually, one of his early products was selling post breakup coaching. So one on one sessions where he helped people get their life and mindset back together. And it worked. It was a good business model.
I agree. I would have a lot to offer. I mean the stories and the lessons I've been able to collect from a couple of two breakups. So it's priceless, I would say. And believe it or not, I believe it or not, but it's funny. I mean, I'm so grateful for all that pain and adversity, and it took me forever to understand that we just need to find a way to be grateful for all of that stuff. Anything and everything that happens, just kind of zero expectations. Be grateful for everything and anything. I think that's one of the secrets, and it really has. I mean, I have no regrets. I mentioned to you that one of my goals is that when I'm out of time, truly out of time, I don't have any regrets. Now, after 47 years, I think one of my biggest achievements, putting all the money stuff and material things aside, is the fact that I have no regrets. I've done everything that I ever wanted. I don't have a single thing that I'm like, okay, I wish that's how I plan on continuing.
Perfect. Yeah, I can really relate to the gratitude thing. I think gratitude is so powerful. For me, I
Mm,
recently got a job, and then about a month and a half after I started, they fired me.
mm,
And
hmm.
this is the first time I've been fired. So
Okay.
that whole day after I got fired, I had this like pit in my stomach, and my mind kept
Mm,
going back to that conversation. And now I can look back and be like, I'm like, oh, this is actually an opportunity because after that, I was able to interview like 4 or 5 people in a single week. And I was like, I've never been able to
mm,
do that before. And my editing
mm.
got better, faster, and so on. And I realized, oh, this might be an opportunity.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you, I mean, just putting this the other way around. So what did you learn? What other things did you learn from that? I mean, just you mentioned that now you're grateful. So anything else besides the extra time with editing and all that? But what about the actual work itself? Do you think there was something that they were right about and that you can work on?
Absolutely. So they are a company actually based in California, and they make online
Mm,
courses. So they basically work
mm,
with content creators, YouTubers, and
mm,
they help them
mm,
build online courses. And then they manage the
mm,
customer support, the online course, the technical
mm,
aspect, all of that. So
mm,
basically,
mm,
full service course publisher, and they partner with
mm,
them on a revenue share model. So I do appreciate a lot of things I learned there. I very quickly learned how a sort of small company functions, a tech company. It was fully remote. We were very efficient, and I feel like we got a lot done. Like in the time I
mm,
was there, we launched 3 new courses. We launched a group coaching program that was brand new, and so I feel like they were quite innovative and fast. And I
mm,
appreciated that because one of my previous jobs was with the Canadian government, and that's the
mm,
opposite of efficient and fast, right? So and then they told me their feedback was valuable, which was really they needed someone who was thorough, where I would double check things, but I would still make mistakes. And really, my strength was, and this might be like my ADHD, where I just love checking off
mm,
boxes. So I
mm,
would get a lot done. Like I set myself a goal, which is like if I have anything on my to do list every night, I'll check and then I'll do it. Right. So
mm,
there were times I was turning in stuff that was due in 2 months, 2 months
mm,
early. And
mm,
that felt
mm,
really good to me, just getting things done. But
mm.
they felt I needed to be more thorough, and I think they were right. Um, so it just wasn't a good fit. And they said there's a company out there that would love to have someone who's super efficient, super fast, and just doing a ton of work.
Mm, mm.
More
Absolutely.
action oriented.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it's you mentioned focus as well and being able to say no. And those are the hard things. You mentioned that we have our habits and our tendencies that I mean, there's this saying that our egos are built over the first 2 decades of our lives, and then we spend the rest of our lives, making our egos happy, and that's how we form habits because we are so deep in that mode of operating and behaving and doing stuff. And then, in order to change, we need to unlearn and relearn, and that's hard. It's like this mountain climbing example where you kind of like halfway up and you're like, okay, this is a dead end. Of course, we naturally want to like take a parallel path and continue where we left off, but it doesn't work always that way. Sometimes you have to take 5 steps back, go to the bottom of the mountain, and then do a restart, and that's hard, and that's called unlearning and then relearning. But it requires focus, and that's an area of life where I really sucked in the beginning, and it hasn't been until lately where I've been able to realize how much I have to say no in order to say yes to the most important things. And this has probably been one of my biggest personal and business learnings of life, being able to focus. And I took pride in the fact that even in my corporate years, I was the guy who was the jack of all trades. I started in product marketing. I did program management. I did business development. I did, sourcing of buying and procurement. I did all of that stuff. So I was kind of the jack of all trades, but then I said yes to a lot of things, but then I never really had that creator time. Like Alex, I don't know if you saw one of these videos where he was
Maker
talking
and
about
manager
how he
time.
created. Correct. Yeah. I know the creator or the maker. And he was like, oh my God, that hit me. And I had to record one too, where I kind of like wanted to put my personal touch to the same topic, but it was me, that manager thing, all day long. And being able to say no has always been hard, but you have to say no so that you can reserve those blocks of creative time. And now that I have to record these videos and do a lot of deep thinking and all of that stuff, I was forced to learn that, but it's good. It's life is a constant learning process. You're 20 years younger than me. It's good that you understand it now, that you need to learn how to say no and focus and not always satisfy those deep habits that you created, 15, 20 years ago. Sometimes you have to unlearn.
Yeah, I think the topic of unlearning is really important for entrepreneurs because there's kind of these stages to the journey. And in the first stage, what you're rewarded for is actually what will hold you back from reaching the second stage,
Mm,
and so
mm,
on. So, for example,
mm.
early on in your career, you're rewarded for saying yes to everything, being a go
Right,
getter, using your youth and energy. And at that point, you
right.
don't know what to specialize in yet. So, you're just
Mm,
trying to figure it out. And then once you
mm,
figure it out, then you have to start saying no to almost everything. And you
mm,
just say,
mm,
and there's something from Derek Sivers, another entrepreneur and writer.
mm,
He says, hell
mm,
yes or no. So if it's not a hell yes, it's a no.
Correct. Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's so true. But it's hard. It's really, really hard. And I look at it even in my own family. I mean, me and my brother, we are in many ways very similar. But the one thing in his life that he has really excelled compared to me is focus. He's always delegated everything and anything. It doesn't matter who does it, as long as he doesn't have to do it, so that he can concentrate on the thing that he wants to do, that he's passionate about. And I always took pride in the fact that I did everything. I didn't understand that, okay, it's away from that one thing that really matters that I have to say yes to. So, but you live and learn. That's what it is.
Absolutely. Yeah. So on the subject of your brother, what's your advice for entrepreneurs who want to find a partner to start a business with, or just in general, when you're picking someone to work with long term? What are the traits you look for? What are the values you look for? How do you judge a person?
Well, good people, first of all, but honesty and integrity overall. I mean, there's this, I've been notorious when it comes to this, but I haven't really, believe it or not, even though I come from a corporate world where everything was under a contract and everything was in writing and all of that. But I've always been a handshake type of a guy. If I have a connection with somebody, then I can do a pretty large deal, but just, okay, let's do it. And I don't think it's necessarily the best way, but I've been lucky, or maybe I've just worked hard on that. But I've always put a lot of emphasis on finding the right people, good people who you can trust. Obviously competent, skilled people, but trust and honesty, integrity is above all, because you just have to be able to trust that other person, like somebody you could go to war with. I mean, it's just like, and I think the definition of friends and partner and whether it's a life partner or a business partner is the same. There's three criteria: somebody whose interests are aligned with you, who always has your back, and somebody you learn from. I think those three, and whether you're choosing a life partner or a business partner, it's the same criteria.
Yeah.
And we can always audit our inner circle. Is our business partner or life partner or friend somebody that we learn from? Do they always have our back? If not, that's one of those no's that we have to sometimes say, okay, well, we have to cut these people from our lives because it's a distraction at the end of the day.
Yeah. And sometimes your life goes in a direction that they aren't prepared for. And so it's just a natural sort of separation that happens, which just, it's nobody's fault, right? It's just circumstance.
Yes, that's right. Absolutely. And one of key lessons from my personal life, I wasn't very good at. I mean, my intuition has always been right, but I was also stuck with why. I had to understand why certain things happen. And then even if my intuition said something, I wasn't able to follow my intuition or my gut if I couldn't find a logical reason. Like, why is this happening? Whether it's relationships with romantic relationships or business or whatever, I always had to find that reason. And now I learned again through trial and error, making a lot of mistakes, that your intuition is always right. And you don't need to have a reason. There doesn't have to be a why. Sometimes just things go bad and there's nothing you can do about it. Move on.
Yeah, and on the subject of honesty, this is something that took me a long time to learn, because I think up until I was about 21, 22, I was like a chronic bullshitter, basically. Right? So I would like tell stories, I would puff myself up. It was a very insidious form of dishonesty, because I think it's the kind of dishonesty that some businesses reward, some corporate environments reward, and you feel like a better, more likable person because of it. You feel like you're just being social and personable. But then over time, I learned about honesty. I began to think about it, and I realized that I was actually hurting myself in the long run, right? Like these lies I told other people, I would begin to believe them myself. And then I'm not operating on reality, and then I'll make poor decisions and so on. And so I started making a concerted effort to tell the truth. And I would like start writing down every lie I told. And I realized, this honesty is actually a skill you can practice. It's not a virtue that you're
Correct.
just born with.
I agree. I think everything is a learnable skill at the
Yeah,
end of the day. Again, one of these big lessons in life, I used to think that it's black or white. You're either this or that, but no, I'm a good example. I'm living proof of that. You can learn almost anything. It's just have to be willing to do the work, put in the reps like anything else.
absolutely.
But to your point, usually the reason why we do certain things, many people start a business because of money or external validation or whatever, but it's always there's an insecurity somewhere underneath the surface. And that's why we do things. People exaggerate what they own and what they have and what kind of cars they drive and all kinds of stuff like that. But to me, it's always that very toxic, deep insecurity. I'm not saying you have it, but we all have insecurities, and I think it starts with self-awareness. That's one of the skills that we all need to practice, I think, a lot more. And it's hard because if you're a deep thinker, you almost automatically, if you can look yourself in the mirror, you automatically then, in that case, pretty self-aware. But there's also a fine line between blaming yourself too much, and being able to draw the line. But I think self-awareness is one of those skills that we all need to have because you always find the answers in the mirror at the end of the day.
Yeah, I've noticed that it's much easier to be compassionate with others, whereas
Mm,
with myself, it's much easier to beat myself up for whatever reason or to be hard on
correct.
myself.
Yeah.
And so I love Jordan Peterson's advice, which is just treat yourself the way you would a close friend who comes to you for advice.
Correct. Correct. Yeah. I completely agree. It's hard. I've always been very hard on myself, and it's sometimes we have to give ourselves a lot more credit. And I'm still trying to learn that. To be perfectly honest, it's so easy to kind of like uh, be hard on yourself and just like not take any days off and all of that. But we need to find a good balance.
Yeah. And just to wrap up the honesty thing, I think a lot of people have a misconception that honesty is this kind of virtue that you sacrifice for and that you give up,
Mm,
profits
mm,
or success or whatever it is.
mm,
Um,
mm.
and I've also realized that the people who view business as dog eat dog or win lose, which is what I was raised
Mm,
on, like my early jobs taught me
mm.
that, winner takes all mentality.
Yeah.
But I later
Yeah.
learned that actually business is positive sum. It's not zero sum. Both people can
Correct.
benefit. It's win-win. Otherwise, you wouldn't be doing the transaction, or you shouldn't be, ideally. And
Correct.
I also learned then that integrity and honesty benefit your business. They benefit your relationships. They enrich everything. And you're not losing money because of it, especially not in the long run.
Correct. I don't know if you follow Naval Ravikant,
Oh, I love him.
and
Yeah.
then his definition of infinite games and finite games.
Right.
That's the exact same thing. I mean, that definition of an infinite game where your goal is to keep playing, and all good games in life are infinite. There is no ending point. There is no set rules, no winner or loser. Business is a win-win game where everybody can be a winner, whereas politics is a win and lose game. So there has to be a winner or a loser in order for there to be a winner. So
Yeah.
it's great stuff.
Yeah. Naval has this great thread on Twitter that's like, how to get rich without being lucky. And I think it's his most popular thread of all time.
Yeah, I've seen that too.
Yeah.
I've
And
seen that too. Good stuff.
yeah, I love some of the stuff he says in there. Like, partner with high integrity, high intelligence people who are driven and
Mm,
find industries where you can play positive sum games,
correct.
right? Don't put yourself in an industry where you have to take from others. Find an industry where you can
Yeah,
grow the entire pie. I
correct.
think is great.
Correct. Yeah, I
So,
agree.
for someone starting their first business, what do you think is the practical outlook they should take? Do you have a framework for how they should maybe identify demand, find product market fit? Like, what steps can they take so
Mm,
that when they actually start working, like launching in some sense, they're more likely to succeed
mm,
than if they just go in blind?
mm. Alex has a lot of good stuff on this, and my personal way, I've always been a big picture person. I was planning on recording a video probably this week, latest next week about this, where I actually I was semi-active in starting a massage business here in Finland, and I put together a lot of material for that, and I was planning on walking through my way of putting a business plan together, and I'll do that one of these days. But basically, what I look at, I always start with something that I'm deeply interested in, and then we talk about passion and how first it's an interest, and then a lot of work, you get good at it, and then it becomes your passion. But business overall can be your interest area, but I happen to be passionate about all kinds of businesses. But to me, it's always the big picture. So even though this is kind of a little counterintuitive to that, defining a niche, like going really small first and then going wider, but I always want to understand the basics. So I look at the total addressable market, even though that's not really the deciding factor, but I want to understand what I'm playing with. So let's say in this massage business example, I was looking at being able to pull some data from the US and then comparing that to what I have in Finland and using some assumptions and all of that. And I was able to arrive at a conclusion that the market is roughly this big. Then I look at the existing players there, and I want to understand my playing field. And then very soon after that, I start focusing on the customer. So that's just the stuff that's nice to know. Okay, how big is the market? And, what is everybody else doing in that space, just to get an idea. But then super soon after that, you turn your focus on the customer. And to me, it's about identifying a problem. So what's the problem in the marketplace, and how is it that I can solve that problem? And then that's where putting that offer comes into play together and all of that. But somebody, I don't know, famous once said that when you focus on the customer, well, you never need to worry about competition. And I think it's so true. But to me, it's about understanding what I'm dealing with, what are the customer pain points. And then what I do is that I put together a timeline usually. To me, it's in chronological order. So using this massage business example. So the reason why I looked into that was that I've been using massage services for 25 years, maybe 25 plus years. So I know that business pretty well, and I what kind of service I want. And I was curious why there wasn't anybody like that, what I was after here in Finland. And then I was looking at whether there could be a business opportunity there. And I think there is. There's just another reason why I didn't pursue that. But anyhow, so then I look at the whole, what I call value chain in chronological order. And I put myself in the customer's shoes, and I walk myself through all these steps. And I'm like, from making an appointment and, like creating a value chain, a chronological value chain where I have all the problems or all the customer interaction points that then later on might become or turn into challenges and problems. And then I, turn those into solutions. And then at the end of the day, I prioritize them. That to me is the business plan. Of course, numbers then as well, but it all boils down to that, identifying the problem and the solution, putting yourself in the customer's shoes.
Makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Especially when you go through the sort of the flow of the customer, you start identifying the pain points. And it's actually great to start a business where you are the target customer, because
Correct.
that you might hate it when they're late, or they schedule an appointment but then they have to reschedule, or they have very few options open for you to schedule, right? Or you're on hold for more than 5 minutes, whatever it is.
Correct.
And then you can
But I think that's, yeah. But what I was about to say is that I think the difficulty then starts with that. Once you've done the value chain analysis and identified all the problems and the solutions, but then coming back to this niche. So, riches are in the niches. So then you really have to understand what is it you prioritize. And oftentimes it's so super hard for us people to really trust our instincts and say that, okay, something this simple can be very good. And like Alex says, many people say that do what everybody else does, but do it in half the time.
Right.
The only way how you can compete against free is fast. Do it in half the time.
People will pay for speed. That's what FedEx did.
Time and convenience. Exactly. That's how FedEx got started. Exactly. Time and convenience. So I think, this, you've read his books. This is free advertising to Alex, even though he doesn't need it. But he's a brilliant guy, and he's value formula definition, where he has the dream outcome and the likelihood. below that, he has the effort, sacrifice, and time. It's just brilliant. And I think oftentimes we get, especially starting entrepreneurs, we get the best bang for our buck when we focus on making something faster and easier for the paying customer. Because the mistake is always that we make things too complex. And I've been on the same boat. I think the killer ideas are always brain dead simple. You can't explain it to a child, you don't know it. And the same thing applies to a business idea. It has to be so simple that you can explain it to anybody in 30 seconds. They don't get it, it's not going to fly. So then identifying, coming back to that, okay, what is important to the customer? What are the pain points? What are the solutions? But then knowing out of those 15 or 500 different solutions, what is really truly important. And then that's where it gets hard. You have to trust your instincts and say that, okay, I'm basing my business model on this one particular element. And then when I get that really right, and then my niche is super small and narrow, then I can start. When I master that, when I'm the biggest fish of that tiniest pond, then I can start getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And that's hard. That is so super hard, because oftentimes we do this more for less type of an approach. We take and I've been on the same boat too. I made the same mistake. So take the average on the marketplace. So let's say cleaning services. I had a cleaning business that didn't materialize because of immigration issues, believe it or not. But anyhow, so me and my friend, we were about to start a cleaning service here. And we made the mistake of not understanding what business we were truly in. We thought it was a marketing play. How do we price this? How do we have the price categories? And what is available in the marketplace? Let's take the average and, price our service slightly below and offer a little more. So more for less. And that's the danger zone. And it takes so much guts, courage, whatever the word is, to kind of like really trust your instincts and go with that super narrow approach.
There's another thing from Alex that I love, which is he talked about how every business he was in, he thought it was about one thing, and then he learned it was actually about another thing. So he says cleaning businesses, for example, you might think they're about marketing, but they're actually
hiring people
staffing.
And training.
Yeah,
absolutely.
It's recruitment,
Absolutely.
It's staffing, it's the churn that you'll go through with cleaners, and it's getting cleaners to show up on time, do the job, and so on. And I also love how he talks about, like, if you're a small business, use your advantage, right? You can write a handwritten card saying thank you to every customer that a big business won't do. And your customers will remember you for that. And you can tell customers that they have your individual attention, where for a big company, they're just another number in a process, right? And so on.
Yes.
And if you're the big company, you say, well, we have proven processes, so we know we can get you results and so on. So you can use whatever you have.
And if I go back to my own entrepreneurial career, the first steps when I started my company in the US, looking back, my whole business idea, my whole business model was based on one principle: make good promises and keep them all. That's all. That's all I did. Of course I knew what I was doing. I mean, eventually, because I had to learn. But at the end of the day, I mean, that's what it boiled down to. Because inventory, when it comes to housing, is controlled by, at that point, this was the financial crisis after that. It was controlled by the banks, ultimately by the realtors listing the properties, and then homeowners. So I had to show them that I was a trusted player. But the promises that I made, I always kept them. And that's all it was. That's how I got all my business, honestly.
That's how you build trust.
I was no better than anybody else. But it's speaking of a simple, narrow approach. Make good promises and keep them all. Because I told the realtors and I told especially the agents, because, if you think about the game, you don't need to have a rocket scientist to understand what it's all about. If somebody's listing a property, it's a bank-owned property, and you were hired by the bank to do the sale for you, to sell the property for you. The last thing you want to see happen as a real estate agent is that you have to go back to the bank and say, okay, the deal fell through. My buyer walked. I didn't get my money. It's going to take you another 3 months with escrow and stuff. And many people still kept doing that. They offered 200 and they were willing to pay 190. Once they got their initial offer accepted at 200, they started negotiating their way down to that 190 desired level. without understanding that that's not how it works. The last thing you want to see happen is that real estate agent who controls the inventory lose face. If they lose face, you're dead. They're never going to give any deals to you again. So, of course, I had to, you know, learn some tough and expensive lessons in the beginning, but, I always get my promise. That's how I got my deals. Nothing else. So it's the same thing with whether it's a cleaning service, you figure out what is that you need to do to succeed. Initially, I thought it's about, choosing the right hardwood floors and tile, and nobody cared. Of course, you have to, at a basic level, know what you're doing, but that's not a difference maker. And then the next thing is you have to be able to crank the system up, have enough marketing and advertising and, have the pipeline full all the time. But it's a trust game.
Yeah, I think trust is very underrated. And I think trust is really the asset that businesses build more so than profit or inventory or systems. It's trust.
Correct. Yeah, I agree. And we mentioned Alex 15 times, or 25 times, and that's one of the things he says too, state the facts, tell the truth. That's how it is. It's always the best marketing strategy ever. You're honest to yourself. And, you keep your promises at the end of the day, and it might take longer, but then what you have is sustainable, and you have a good reputation.
Yeah. So the last thing I want to cover is just, sorry, do you have something to share?
No, go ahead.
Yeah, so just pricing and sales and common misconceptions. So I've been following two creators, Blair Enns and Jonathan Stark, and both of them are prolific in the world of value pricing, and they basically help consultants move from hourly based pricing towards value pricing. And the problems with hourly based pay are literally the better you get, the less you earn, right? The more efficient you get, the less you make. You have to keep cranking your rates up, and at some point, it looks ridiculous. Like Jonathan earns like over $5,000 an hour, but he doesn't charge hourly. If he did, it would look ridiculous.
Correct.
Yeah. And Blair, he helps creative firms, design firms also do this, navigate this. And he wrote an amazing book that I just read recently called The Win Without Pitching Manifesto. And it really covers a lot of the similar things that you talked about in starting small and differentiating yourself and having no competitors, being the biggest fish. Because if you're a commodity, everyone's comparing price. You're competing against Walmart or Amazon. You're not going to win. But if you are a special custom service, nobody's comparing price. They're just looking at value.
Correct.
And once someone is thinking in value, you can serve them, great value and capture a percentage of it. So
100%.
My first question is, what do you think are the beginner mistakes around sales and misconceptions around sales?
Okay, sales. Pricing, I completely agree with you. You have to find your niche and then that's why you niche down, so that you become kind of like a dominant player in that small category. And then it's not about pricing anymore. You're seen as the solution for these people. About sales, there's many over my, 25-year career, whether it's corporate or entrepreneurship. I think the number one thing is that many people are trying to force a sale. And when I was selling my own services, my best deals or sales took place when I was, believe it or not, recommending something else to the client first, being super honest, going back to the honesty. And I think sales is about helping the customer decide. And I think when you look at it that way, you take a lot of pressure out of that transaction and that discussion between you and the prospect. And the other thing that I have learned, this is from my brother, who's a great salesperson, and also following other salespeople who are really able to make their mark. I always made the mistake of talking too much because I was excited about something, and the hard thing is that when you're passionate about something and you really believe in your own stuff, you have conviction, like Gary Vaynerchuk talks about, not convincing anybody, but having conviction. This is one of the key things too. So you believe in your own product, you feel bad if the person doesn't buy from you. But then when I have had that conviction, when I have strongly believed in my own product, it was also hard for me to shut up I kept talking. I kept talking. You probably noticed I talk a lot, right? Sometimes I talk too much. I need to listen more. And when you're trying to sell something, the hardest thing for me personally has been to shut up, understand when enough is enough, and listen so that you understand what is that the person is after, so that you can solve his or her problem. So I think those are the things. So helping them decide, listening, and understanding that you're solving their problem. And then if you're honest about it, say, okay, well, I want to understand what is it you're after. Maybe we can help. When you approach it that way, you don't feel that same pressure anymore about closing the deal. You just understand that, okay, my job is to help them. And oftentimes it happened to me that I told people to do something else. I actually run these ads still here in the local papers, the old-fashioned way, about me buying properties. And I get these calls, I would say on average one a day. 95% of the times I recommended these people to do something else than sell to me. When I ask them, okay, what is it that you're after? And when I understand that time is not one of their key priorities, meaning they have all the time in the world, I'm like, okay, I know that I can't force a sale. It's not my objective either. Then I tell them that, okay, look, just list the property, market value, see what happens. And then, if you don't get it sold, talk to me again, call me, and then we can work something out. I think those to me are the biggest lessons. So, as far as sales goes, I've never been a natural salesperson. I can talk, almost about anything for hours, but it doesn't mean that you can sell if you can talk.
I absolutely love that answer. It's the same thing I learned from the Win Without Pitching Manifesto, where he talks about how he was, at the age of 22, he was made the director of new business for a creative agency. And new business is the euphemism they use for sales because they don't like the word sales. And he was taught how to do it the way other people do it, which is you respond to a request for proposal, you make a pitch, you basically try to persuade somebody to buy your services. You try to get a small job and then widen, do more work for them and make it bigger and so on. And now his approach is completely different. And it all started with a workshop where someone taught him that sales is not about persuasion. It's just about being the facilitator between supply and demand, identifying if there's a need, and then helping them take the next steps. And sometimes those next steps have nothing to do with you, and that's fine. You're still helping them, and they'll value it. And when they need you in the future, they'll find you.
And you leave a positive impression. And, it's
yeah.
Surprisingly, sometimes these people call you back and say, hey, you were not trying to fool me, or you were actually trying to help me for real. And then you never know. And if you never get the sale, at least, if you feel good about it afterwards, you were able to help somebody. And I think it's, you have to trust that there's enough demand for our services no matter what. Even if we said no to first 100 people, there's going to be somebody.
Yeah. And on the subject of, you talking to people on the phone when they call and you realize they have no urgency, therefore they're not going to be a good fit. Jonathan Stark has the same, he calls it the 3 whys that he asks any potential client. And they're basically, why this? Why this project? Why not a different kind of project for the same solution? Why now? Why not 6 months from now? Why not study it? Why not think about it? Why not wait and see? And then why me? I'm one of the most expensive options in the market. Why not get your cousin to do it, or go on Fiverr, or do it yourself? And so the interesting thing is, once he asks these questions, usually the business owner has already thought about it, and that's why they've come to him. But they basically then persuade themselves why they should hire him by the end of that, right? They're talking themselves into the sale.
Correct. That's the thing. That's a very good point, because you want to hear these people convince themselves so that you don't convince them. Exactly. So you ask questions instead of answering a lot of questions. So you ask questions so that people arrive at that conclusion, and then at the end of the day, oh, this guy is the number one for me, and I'll end up buying his products or services.
Yeah,
that's right.
And if they answer any of those questions and you find out it's not urgent, or they don't need you specifically, or this isn't the right project, then you tell them that, and then they're grateful for it.
Correct.
And they move on.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because you can't force a sale. And even if you were able to convince somebody, then it's going to backfire one way or the other. These people are going to cancel. They're going to complain about your ethics and behavior, and you won't get more than that 1 or 1.5 star review anyhow. And it's not going to help you. It's going to ruin your reputation. So, and you don't want those customers because it's just not going to help anybody.
Absolutely. So my final question is just around marketing. To tie all of this together, what do you think are the beginner concepts and fundamentals that every entrepreneur should know about marketing? And how do you think they can put them into practice and begin to build that muscle?
Well, marketing is the process of making known, and brand is what you make known. And again, somebody else has come up with that. And there's also this pretty provocative, I think Gary Vaynerchuk said this, that there's this old saying that if you have to sell, your product sucks. You don't know how to market. If you have to market your brand and your product sucks. It's like this, well, it's not that black and white, but I think there's some truth to that. And Alex talks about optimizing your business from front to back or back to front. And I think there's a lot of truth to the idea that if you have to sell like crazy, maybe your product, your brand, and maybe your marketing isn't up to speed because you're always chasing that next sale, and it's not sustainable. And he talks about he writes books, like you said, and he talks about 2 ways to do it: whether you write an average book in 2 months and spend your whole life marketing it, or then you spend 2 years writing a really good book, and then the book sells itself, so it becomes an asset that has value. It's like an IPR, intellectual property, right? At the end of the day. But about marketing, to your question, to me, there's many ways to market, and I think it really boils down to what stage you're in. I think in the beginning, I would focus on one channel, one target group, focusing on my product, keeping it narrow and getting really good at that, and then making it, wider instead of trying every possible channel. Because oftentimes the problem is that when we start a business, we are the founder, we are the marketer, we are the financing director, and we are the HR person, and we are everything from A to Z. So it's hard. So I think focus is number one. And there's plenty of concepts out there as far as in how many ways you can market. You can, like Alex talks about this, how you can run paid ads and post content and contact strangers and contact people you know. That's a very good way to start. So I would actually tell people to read his book about that. What I've done personally over the years is I've used pretty much all of them. When I started my business, I started running paid ads, and I started contacting people I didn't know. And that was in the form of calling people up. And it's all about facing those fears and just starting taking action. I've used all of these 4 ways of marketing extensively, but posting content is the newest one for me. And I think if I was a starting entrepreneur, I would pick probably content creation, social media. Like Gary Vaynerchuk says this all the time, mobile phone. This is the TV nowadays. Now we have 7 channels on this. Like we used to have when you were watching, well, you were so much younger, but you grew up when you were 10 or 15, you were watching TV. All the attention was on TV. Now all the attention is here. This is the TV and the TV remote control of our today's society. And now all those 7 social media platforms, all the 7 channels that we have here. The only difference between the 90s and today is that those 7 channels are global. So, and it's free. It's free distribution and delivery. I think everybody, and this took me forever to realize, all business owners out there, be a lot smarter than me. Start early. Doesn't matter how bad you are in the beginning. I sucked and I still suck, but I still do it to get better. But to your question about how to market, I would, whatever my business, whatever my product or service is, I would definitely put together a content creation strategy. And then I would pick one other way of marketing in addition to that, whether it's contacting people I know or strangers or running ads or whatever that is. But social media would be a centerpiece or in the center of all my attention and action going forward as a business owner. And it's going to be no matter what business I do in the future or wherever the attention is. I have now understood finally this attention game. one of those things that took me forever. I'm a pretty slow learner, as you can notice, but it's huge. It's just huge, and it's still, I believe, I don't know if it's at the outset, maybe not, but we still have a good runway to go. Whatever the next attention spot is going to be, whether that's virtual reality, we don't know who owns that space, whether it's going to be free. Think about it. This is free. If you wanted to put your face out there, me or you, 2002 or 97, you would have needed 15 different yeses from all these stakeholders in the value chain. There would probably have been, all those people probably would have said no to me or you. You know what I mean? Nowadays, we can just do whatever we want. Of course, there's plenty of supply. The competition is fierce, and it's hard to break through. But still, nobody's saying no to you, so you can do whatever you want. And if you're good at your craft, you have a good product, it's only a matter of time, when you get some attention. So, the long answer again, but I would definitely do social media. Figure out a way to start posting organic content, and then running ads out of the ones that do well, and then pick one other method on top of that.
Yeah, I love something Alex shared, which is that proof performs best. And he talks about how one of his best performing ads was literally him posting in a Facebook group of customers and asking them, "Oh, how did our product help you? Can you share your story?" And then it was just like a 3-minute ad of him scrolling through the comments on his phone. And that's just it. No commentary, nothing.
Exactly.
And people loved it.
Think about it. Yeah. But of course, he had to try a million different things before he realized that was doing well. So again, It's the volume, it's the reps, it's the work that he had to put in to understand what works, what doesn't. So it's that action again that we're coming back to. So
yeah, he said he analyzed 2,000 ads, and the top 50 of them, 40 of those were proof based. So he does the work. He does the work for sure.
He does the work. And the other thing is that, which was, I don't know if you bought Gary's latest book.
Day Trading Attention.
Day Trading. Yeah. I listen to basically all his, videos, and I'll watch his videos and listen to his stuff, and, bought the book as well. But he talks about that, the importance of organic social media, and then identifying which posts or updates, which content does well, and then, tweaking those and then turning those into ads and all that stuff. It's an art. Obviously, you have to practice it to be good at it, but it's fascinating. And if you think about it, it's not that different compared to what advertising was all about. When I was in product marketing in a telecommunications company, I was involved in some of the ad creation stuff as well for the products that I was involved in. So it's not that different, actually. Quite the opposite. The same logic and the same rules apply. Now it's just the social media game, but the way you have to get the attention, you have to have the hook in the beginning, and then how you kind of tie it back to call to action in the end. It's all the same, which was the thing with radio and TV ads back in the day. So.
Yeah, one major difference I would say is back in the day, ads were much more guaranteed. You were guaranteed attention. You pay X dollars, you get X minutes of uninterrupted screen time, and people are watching it because they don't have anything better to do generally. They don't have a skip button, they don't have ad blockers, and so on. But today, people have so many options and much shorter attention spans, and I would say a higher standard of quality. So what's really smart about Gary Vee's strategy is that organic content that performs well means that it's voluntarily capturing people's attention. So when you turn it into an ad, you don't have to force people to watch. They don't want to skip it. They want to watch it. And Ryan Reynolds has really mastered this, where so many of his quote unquote ads are actually very entertaining, and people love to watch them and share them and comment on them. So they do great.
And I think that's a brilliant point. And I think that's going to be the trend going forward. And I think there's going to be less traditional ads as we understand them, like the Super Bowl type of ads, even though in Gary's opinion, that $8 million you spend is still the best investment in today's attention economy, because everybody tunes in to watch those ads when it comes to Super Bowl. Usually we just kind of like walk away from TV or whatever when you have the commercial break. But anyhow, I agree with you. It's about storytelling and then how you integrate those ideas and little clues and do the product placement, which has been there for years, but still it's that storytelling nowadays and how you can put all that together.
Absolutely. It's been great having you on, Erica. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate your insights. You've
Thank you.
certainly changed my mind on a few things.
Well, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
All right. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.